easy. Breathe for half a second. This is the moment they land in, convinced you are finished. They watched you lose everything. Not quietly, not gracefully. They watched it happen in public, in slow motion, with their arms crossed and their mouths already rehearsing the eulogy. They watched your name fall out of rooms. They watched doors lock themselves. They watched people who swore loyalty suddenly forget your face. They watched resources dry up, timelines collapse, plans evaporate like smoke. And in their heads, the story was over. Roll credits. You were supposed to disappear right there, right in the wreckage, right where the light abandoned you. But something went wrong with their narrative. Because while they were counting what you lost, they never counted what you became. While they were tracking the collapse, they missed the recalibration. While they were laughing at the ashes, they didn't notice you memorizing the pattern of the fire. That's the paradox they still can't explain. You didn't win by avoiding the fall. You won because the fall stripped you down to something unrecognizable, something they didn't have a file for, something that doesn't beg, doesn't rush, doesn't perform pain for sympathy. You see, losing everything doesn't make you weak. It makes you illegible, and illegible people terrify systems built on prediction. They thought pain would turn you small. They thought humiliation would turn you quiet. They thought deprivation would make you desperate enough to crawl back and ask permission to exist. But pain didn't break you. It reorganized you. It burned the soft illusions off your bones. It taught you how to move without applause, how to breathe without approval, how to operate when nobody is watching, which is exactly when you become dangerous. This is where the duality snaps into place. You were the saint when you believed in fairness. You were the angel when you played by rules that were never written for your survival. And then they dragged you through hell and expected you to come back begging for light. Instead, you learned how darkness works. You learned its timing, its silence, its patience. You learned that demons aren't loud, they're precise. And now they don't know which version of you they're dealing with because you stopped advertising your intentions. They watched you lose everything, but they never saw you let go. That's the part that keeps them awake. You let go of needing to be understood. You let go of explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You let go of the fantasy that justice arrives on schedule. And when you let go, something snapped into alignment. Your moves stopped being emotional. Your silence stopped being empty. Your patience stopped being passive. You became unpredictable, not chaotic, not reckless, unreadable. And unreadable beats powerful every single time. They still don't understand how you won. They're looking for a comeback story, a lucky break, a secret ally, a hidden advantage. They want a reason that keeps the world safe and logical. But the truth is uglier and sharper than that. You won because you stopped trying to win the way they recognize. You won by surviving long enough to evolve. You won by letting the old version of you die without a funeral. And don't get it twisted. This wasn't some clean rebirth. This was brutal. This was lonely. This was nights where the dark spoke back, and mornings where hope felt like a scam. There was learning to sit with the voice that asks if it would be easier to disappear. This was choosing not to, not out of optimism, but out of defiance. Pure, cold defiance. The kind that doesn't announce itself. The kind that just keeps going. That's why they're uneasy now. Because people who lose everything and still stand don't operate on the same moral math. You're not motivated by fear anymore. You've already lived inside it. You're not seduced by promises. You've watched them break. You're not impressed by threats. You've already survived the worst-case scenario. What do you leverage against someone who has nothing left to lose but everything to build? They can't decide whether you're a miracle or a mistake, an angel who endured or a psychopath who adapted too well, and that uncertainty drives them insane. They want to categorize you so they can neutralize you, but you don't fit. You're the contradiction walking, soft-spoken with a blade hidden in the calm, empathetic but no longer exploitable, kind but never confused again. Here's the part they'll never say out loud. Watching you win after losing everything forces them to confront their own fragility. Because if you can be stripped down to nothing and still rise, then all the comfort they built their identity on suddenly looks flimsy. Your existence becomes an accusation. Your survival becomes a mirror. And most people would rather call you dangerous than admit they're afraid of what you represent. You didn't just survive the collapse. You learned how to build in the rubble. You learned which instincts lie and which ones whisper truth. You learned that timing beats speed, silence beats noise, and restraint beats rage. You learned how to wait without rotting, how to sharpen yourself without bleeding everywhere, how to smile without revealing a damn thing. That's why the win doesn't look loud. That's why there was no parade when it happened. The win is internal first, structural, permanent. The kind of win that doesn't need witnesses because it rewrites how you move through the world. They expected a broken person. They got a calibrated one. So when they look at you now, there's confusion in their eyes. Because the version of you they buried didn't stay buried. But the version that came back isn't interested in revenge, explanations, or validation. You're not here to prove them wrong. You're here because you endured long enough to outgrow the game entirely. They watched you lose everything, and somehow, impossibly, you still won. Not by becoming louder, not by becoming crueler, but by becoming something they can't predict, can't control, and can't erase. And that realization, that's the part that keeps them watching. And here's the part that never makes it into their conversations, never shows up in their post-mortems or whispered breakdowns. When you lost everything, you didn't just survive it. You studied it. You watched who vanished. You watched who pretended not to notice. You watched who suddenly found morals, excuses, distance. You memorized the exact moment sympathy expired and convenience took over. And you didn't rage. You didn't beg. You didn't expose anyone. You just filed it away. Quietly. Permanently. Because loss teaches faster than loyalty ever could. That's when the transformation stopped being visible and started being lethal. You learned how people really move when the lights go out. You learned how quickly principles melt under pressure. You learned that most alliances are rented, not owned. And once you see that, truly see it, you stop expecting warmth from cold systems. You stop confusing proximity with loyalty. You stop handing your heart to structures designed to extract, not protect. They thought you losing everything would empty you. Instead, it emptied the noise. It removed the dead weight. It burned away the version of you that needed reassurance to function. And what stepped forward afterward wasn't bitter. It was precise, calm, focused. You didn't come back louder. You came back sharper. That's why your silence unsettles them now. Because silence used to mean weakness. Silence used to mean shame. Silence used to mean you were waiting to be rescued. But this silence. This silence is loaded. This is the quiet of someone who already survived the worst case and realized the sky didn't fall. This is the quiet of someone who knows exactly how much damage the truth can do and doesn't need to use it. They keep waiting for you to flinch, waiting for you to explain, waiting for you to snap, confess, collapse, apologize for still existing, but you don't. You move like someone who already died once and came back without fear of dying again. And people can feel that. Animals feel it. Rooms feel it. Systems feel it. Because here's the thing they never anticipated. When you lose everything, fear loses its leverage. What do they threaten you with now? Loss. You already lived inside that crater. Isolation. You already learned how to breathe alone. Failure. You rebuilt your identity without success as a requirement. You crossed the line they used to control people, and you crossed it alone. That's when you stopped being manageable. You started choosing unpredictability over permission. You stopped reacting on schedule. You stopped giving your enemies the satisfaction of watching you hurt. You stopped chasing clarity for people committed to misunderstanding you. You stopped fighting battles designed to drain you and started choosing moments that compound quietly over time. That's not madness. That's evolution. They don't understand how you can still smile, how you can still be calm, how you can still move forward without dragging the wreckage behind you like proof. They assume winning requires spectacle, dominance, revenge, but your win is subtler, and that's what terrifies them. Because it means you're not trying to punish the past. You're building a future that doesn't include it. And somewhere deep down, they know it. They know you saw the truth about them when you were at your lowest. They know you noticed who enjoyed watching you fall. They know you clocked who benefited from your absence. And the fact that you didn't explode, didn't expose, didn't beg for acknowledgement, that restraint rewrote the power dynamic. Because now they don't know what you'll do with what you know. You're not hunting them. You're not chasing closure. You're not demanding justice from a world that already showed you how little it cares. You're moving forward with something far more dangerous than anger: clarity. That's the angel-demon paradox they can't reconcile. You still have empathy, but you're no longer naive. You still have warmth, but it's selective. You still have kindness, but it's armored. You didn't turn evil. You turned aware. And awareness is the one upgrade they can't confiscate. They watched you lose everything, expecting you to crawl back smaller, quieter, grateful for scraps. Instead, you came back with boundaries that don't bend, eyes that don't plead, and a presence that doesn't explain itself. You're no longer auditioning for approval. You're no longer afraid of being misunderstood. You've seen what understanding costs, and you decided it wasn't worth your soul. So now, when you walk into rooms, there's a pause, not because you demand attention, but because your energy doesn't seek it. People sense that you're no longer here to prove anything. You're here because you survived something that would have erased them, and survival without bitterness confuses people more than rage ever could. They thought your story ended when everything was taken from you. What they didn't realize is that was the chapter where the story finally stopped lying. You didn't win because the world suddenly became fair. You won because you became real. You won because you stopped needing outcomes to validate your existence. You won because you learned how to stand in uncertainty without folding. And now they're watching again. But this time, they're not smiling. This time, They're trying to understand what you are. And the truth is, you're not what survives the storm. You're what the storm leaves behind. Stay with me right here, because this is the part they never prepare for. The part no one warns them about when they celebrate someone's collapse. When you lose everything and don't disappear, you don't come back human in the way they expect. You come back calibrated. You come back with a nervous system that has already touched the bottom and realized it didn't die. You come back with eyes that no longer chase safety in people, titles, applause, or outcomes. And that shift, that's irreversible. They keep assuming your strength must be performative, that you're pretending. That one bad day will crack you open and spill the old version of you back onto the floor. They wait for tears, for bitterness, for a public breakdown that lets them feel justified. But you don't give it to them, because the breakdown already happened, privately, brutally, when no one was watching, and you rebuilt yourself without witnesses. That's why you move differently now. You don't rush toward opportunity. You let it reveal itself. You don't overshare. You observe. You don't threaten. You let people underestimate you and document their own mistakes. They mistake your restraint for weakness, and that's their final miscalculation. Because when someone has lost everything, truly lost it, they stop being controlled by urgency. You're not frantic anymore. You're not desperate to be chosen. You're not scared of being left out. You already know what absence feels like. You already know how silence stretches. You already know how cold it gets when support evaporates. And once you know that, once you've lived it, fear loses its teeth. They don't understand how dangerous calm can be. Rage is loud. Rage is predictable. Rage announces itself. Calm just watches. Calm waits. Calm lets people expose themselves while believing they're in control. Calm is what happens when the saint and the psychopath finally make peace inside the same body. You still care, but you no longer sacrifice yourself to prove it. You still feel, but you don't bleed in public anymore. That's the evolution pain gives you when it doesn't kill you. You didn't come back asking for fairness. You came back understanding leverage. You didn't come back demanding love. You came back with discernment. You didn't come back trying to restore what was lost. You came back ready to build something that doesn't collapse when the weather changes. They watched you lose everything and assumed it stripped you of power. But power doesn't come from having things. It comes from knowing you can survive without them. From knowing you can be misjudged, abandoned, humiliated, erased, and still wake up the next day with your spine intact. That kind of resilience rewires you. You stop explaining your motives. You stop chasing recognition. You stop negotiating with people who benefit from your confusion. You become selective with your energy like it's currency, because now you know its value. And here's the part that truly unsettles them. You didn't harden into cruelty. You didn't become loud, reckless, or vindictive. You didn't turn into the monster they could point to and say, "See, we were right." You stayed composed, measured, human, and that robs them of the narrative they need to feel clean about what they did or didn't do when you were falling. Your continued existence becomes evidence. Evidence that their abandonment didn't end you. Evidence that their indifference didn't define you. Evidence that their expectations were shallow and wrong. That's why some of them avoid your eyes now. Because when they look at you, they see the version of themselves that wouldn't have survived what you did. And that comparison hurts more than any accusation you could ever throw. You didn't just win materially or externally. You won internally, structurally, permanently. You won the moment you stopped needing the world to confirm your worth. You won the moment you realized you could carry your own weight without collapsing. You won the moment you chose growth over explanation. They thought losing everything would end your story. What it actually did was remove the distractions that kept you from becoming precise. And now every move you make carries weight. Every silence has intention. Every choice compounds quietly in your favor. You're no longer reactive. You're strategic without being cruel. You're empathetic without being exploitable. You're grounded without being stagnant. And that balance, that contradiction, is what makes you impossible to categorize. They keep trying to decide if you're broken or blessed, if you're healed or dangerous, if you're humble or hiding something lethal beneath the surface. And the truth is, you're all of it. You're what happens when someone walks through hell without losing their conscience, but also without keeping their illusions. You're what happens when pain teaches intelligence instead of bitterness. You're what happens when loss sharpens perception instead of hollowing it out. They watched you lose everything. They stayed to watch you disappear, and instead, they're watching you stand there now, quiet, intact, untouchable, wondering how the hell they misjudged you this badly. And here's where it closes, right where they never expected you to arrive. You don't need revenge. You don't need apologies. You don't even need acknowledgement, because the final victory isn't external, it's existential. You are no longer living on their terms, reacting to their judgments, orbiting their approval. You stepped out of the gravity well when everything was stripped away, and you discovered something terrifyingly liberating. You can exist without their permission. That's why your presence feels heavier now. Not louder, heavier. Because it's rooted, because it's earned, because it's not asking to be let in. You're not trying to be impressive. You're not trying to be understood. You're not trying to be forgiven for surviving. You're just here, fully formed, fully awake, fully aware of what you can endure. They watched you lose everything and assumed that meant you lost yourself. What actually happened is you met yourself, without costumes, without cushioning, without lies. You met the part of you that doesn't collapse when the world withdraws its affection. You met the part of you that keeps breathing when hope goes quiet. You met the part of you that doesn't need witnesses to keep going. And once you meet that part, you never unlearn it. You don't panic the way you used to. You don't beg the way you used to. You don't fear endings the way you used to, because you already lived the ending they threatened you with, and you survived it. That's the win they can't undo. You carry both light and dark now, but they're integrated. The saint learned boundaries. The demon learned restraint. The angel learned how to descend without losing itself. The monster learned empathy without weakness. And that balance makes you stable in a way chaos can't touch. So let them keep watching. Let them keep guessing. Let them keep trying to explain you with old language that doesn't apply anymore. You're not here to satisfy their understanding. You're here because you earned the right to exist on your own terms. They saw you lose everything. They waited for you to vanish, but you didn't disappear. You adapted, you sharpened, you endured, and that quiet, irreversible transformation, that's the real victory. You didn't just survive the collapse. You outgrew the world that thought it could break you. Stop. Don't adjust the volume. Don't look away. This is the moment everything shifted, and you felt it before anyone said a word. Someone defended you out loud, not in a whisper, not in a back channel, out loud, in the open, where consequences live. And the city didn't clap. The city went quiet. Then it started digging. You know why that matters, right? Because silence isn't agreement. Silence is investigation. They didn't defend you because you're harmless. They defended you because they saw something move that shouldn't have moved. A pattern click into place that wasn't supposed to be visible. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't make a speech. You didn't beg for understanding. You just stood there, calm, unreadable, carrying a history that doesn't flinch when stared at. And someone recognized it. That's the part nobody prepares for. The moment a single voice breaks rank and says, "No, not them," that's when the ground shifts. That's when attention sharpens. That's when the people who were comfortable pretending you were nothing suddenly feel stupid for not checking sooner. You weren't defended because you're pure. You were defended because you're precise. They saw the saint in you, the restraint, the discipline, the patience that looks like mercy. And at the same time, they saw the psychopath, the part of you that could end things without blinking if it ever came to that. That paradox terrifies people. They don't know which version they're dealing with, and that uncertainty eats at them. So the city started digging. They went back. They replayed moments they laughed at. They reread messages they dismissed. They examined decisions you made quietly, moves you made early, exits you took before the fire started. And suddenly, none of it looks accidental anymore. That's what happens when someone defends you publicly. It gives permission to look again. And when they look again, they don't find chaos. They find structure. They find timing. They find restraint where there should have been impulse. They find foresight where there should have been panic. They realize you weren't lucky. You were early. You didn't survive because the world spared you. You survived because you adapted faster than it could classify you. That's when the digging turns obsessive. Because now they're not asking, "Who are you?" They're asking, "How long have you been like this?" They start tracing your evolution, the pain you absorbed without broadcasting, the losses you processed in silence, the moments you were pushed into corners and came out sharper instead of louder. They notice how the light never blinded you and the dark never broke you. How you learned to borrow from both. You learned compassion without softness. You learned cruelty without chaos. You learned patience that feels almost predatory. That's not normal. And deep down, they know it. The one who defended you didn't do it because they felt sorry for you. They did it because they recognized a force they didn't want turned against the wrong side. That's the unspoken truth. When someone stands up for you in public, it's not protection, it's alignment. They chose a side. And once that happens, everyone else has to reassess theirs. That's why the city started digging instead of attacking. Attacks are for things you understand. Digging is for things you're afraid you misjudged. They're trying to figure out whether you're a threat or a shield. An anomaly or a warning, a problem, or the solution they didn't know they needed yet. And here's the part that should make you smile. Slowly. You didn't ask for this. You didn't orchestrate it. You didn't even react. Your stillness did the damage. Your refusal to perform, to explain, to soften yourself for comfort. That's what forced the reveal. That's what made someone speak up. That's what triggered the audit of reality around you. Because unpredictability isn't chaos. Unpredictability is control that doesn't announce itself. You became impossible to read by mastering yourself first, and now everyone else is scrambling to catch up. They're digging through your past, hoping to find a flaw big enough to discredit the present. But all they keep finding is consistency under pressure, growth through pain, silence instead of spectacle. They wanted a villain or a victim. They found something worse. They found someone who evolves. And once that realization hits a city, once it spreads quietly through rooms you're not even in, you don't need defenders anymore. The ground does it for you. So let them dig, let them analyze, let them whisper and cross-check and second-guess every assumption they ever made about you. Because the truth is already out there now. Someone saw what you really are. They said it out loud, and the world couldn't unhear it. This isn't the moment they come for you. This is the moment they start preparing, and you've been preparing your whole life. They're preparing now, and you can feel it in the air, can't you? The tension, the way conversations stall when your name comes up, the way people suddenly remember things they forgot about you, the way eyes linger half a second longer, not with curiosity, but calculation. That's what happens when someone defends you out loud. It doesn't just protect you, it exposes everyone else. Because now the question isn't, is this person dangerous? The question is, what side are we on if they are? You see, the city doesn't dig because it's brave. The city digs because it's scared of being late. They don't want to be the last ones to realize you weren't drifting. You were navigating. That every step that looked random was actually adaptive. That every pause they mistook for weakness was you measuring the room, reading the tempo, deciding whether it was even worth your energy. They're digging into timelines now. When did you stop reacting like everyone else? When did your losses stop slowing you down and start sharpening you? When did disappointment turn into discipline? They hate that question the most, because discipline implies choice, and choice implies agency. And agency is terrifying when it doesn't belong to them. They're discovering that you don't move when provoked. You move when it matters. That you don't waste force on noise. That you let people underestimate you because it costs you nothing, and costs them everything later. That's when the saint and the psychopath collide in their minds. They remember moments when you showed mercy, real mercy, the kind that didn't need applause. And then they remember moments when you walked away cold, detached, almost surgical. No rage, no chaos, just absence. That absence did more damage than violence ever could, because violence is emotional. Absence is deliberate. They're starting to understand that you don't need to dominate rooms. You let rooms expose themselves. You don't rush outcomes. You let people trap themselves in their own assumptions. And someone sharp enough, experienced enough, saw it. They saw the pattern and realized defending you wasn't an act of loyalty. It was an act of self-preservation, because people like you don't forget who stood where when the truth surfaced. And that's the part nobody says out loud. When the city digs, it's not just looking for dirt on you. It's looking for leverage on itself. They're asking, did we ignore this person when we shouldn't have? Did we push them when we should have listened? Did we mistake silence for submission? Those questions don't sleep well at night. They replay interactions with you and realize you were always one step ahead, not arrogant, not loud, just aware. You saw the board while everyone else was still arguing over pieces. You adapted without announcing the adaptation. You learned without bragging. You survived without turning survival into your identity. That's evolution through pain. That's power refined instead of raw. And now the city feels stupid for not noticing sooner. That's why the digging gets frantic. Because the more they look, the more they realize there was no sudden transformation, no switch flipped overnight. You didn't snap. You didn't change. You became, gradually, quietly, inevitably. They realized the darkness didn't corrupt you. It educated you. And the light didn't save you. It trained you. You learned when to be gentle and when to be gone, when to speak and when silence would do more damage than words, when to let things burn and when to step aside and let the fire reveal who was standing where. And now they're measuring their own reflections against yours. That's why the atmosphere feels heavy. That's why people hesitate before challenging you now. That's why authority figures suddenly sound polite. Because once someone defends you publicly, the myth collapses. You're no longer a rumor. You're no longer, probably, harmless. You become acknowledged, and acknowledgement changes behavior. They don't know whether to fear you or recruit you. They don't know whether to distance themselves or draw closer. They don't know if you're a warning sign or the future showing up early. And that uncertainty is eating them alive. You're watching it happen without interfering, without feeding it, without correcting the record. Because you understand something they don't yet. Power doesn't need clarification. Let them dig until their fingers bleed. Let them audit every moment you stayed calm while others panicked. Every time you didn't retaliate when retaliation would have been easy. Every time you chose restraint, not because you were afraid, but because you were precise. Eventually, they'll hit bedrock. And when they do, they'll realize the same thing that person realized when they defended you out loud. You're not dangerous because you're aggressive. You're dangerous because you're controlled. And the city? The city is just now realizing what it woke up. And when a city wakes up to something it can't put back to sleep, the first instinct isn't attack. It's hesitation. You're feeling it now. The half steps, the delayed responses, the way people suddenly choose their words like they're walking across thin ice. They don't know what you heard. They don't know what you remember. They don't know how much of the map you already memorized while they were still arguing about the legend. That's the curse of being defended out loud. It turns the spotlight backward. Now every person who ever dismissed you is re-examining themselves. Every authority that overlooked you is wondering whether that oversight was luck or a mistake that's about to compound. Every opportunist who thought you were easy prey is quietly recalculating the risk. Because the digging hasn't stopped. It's gone deeper. They're pulling records that were never meant to be cross-referenced. Conversations that weren't supposed to connect are suddenly sitting side by side. They're realizing you were present at moments that mattered and absent at moments that imploded. You were there when things aligned, gone when things collapsed. That doesn't look random anymore. It looks selective. They're starting to see that you don't chase power. You let power reveal itself. Then you decide whether it's worth touching. That you don't announce loyalty. You observe patterns until loyalty becomes obvious. That you don't need chaos to assert dominance. You let order expose who doesn't belong in it. That's when the angel and the demon fuse in their heads. Because angels are supposed to be naive, and demons are supposed to be reckless. You're neither. You're the kind of presence that forces choice, and choice scares systems built on control. Someone defended you out loud because they recognized the inflection point. The moment where pretending you were insignificant stopped being safe. The moment where neutrality became a liability. They didn't raise their voice to protect you. They raised it to mark territory. a signal, not a shield. And now everyone else is scrambling to understand the rules of a game that changed without announcement. They're digging into your reactions, or lack of them. They're disturbed by how little satisfaction you take in being proven right. How you don't gloat. How you don't rush to correct people who underestimated you. You let the discomfort teach them instead. That kind of restraint doesn't come from kindness alone. It comes from knowing exactly how much damage you could do, and choosing not to. That's what makes you dangerous in a way they can't legislate, because you don't fit the profiles. You don't respond to incentives the way you're supposed to. You don't panic when pressure increases. You simplify. They're noticing how crises sharpen you instead of scatter you. How when things get loud, you get quieter. How when others rush, you pause. How when narratives collapse, you don't scramble to replace them. You watch who does. That watchfulness is unsettling. It makes people feel seen in ways they didn't consent to. So they dig harder, hoping to find a flaw, a contradiction, a moment where you slipped. Something they can point to and say, there's the weakness. But all they keep finding is coherence. Pain that didn't turn you brittle. Failure that didn't make you desperate. Isolation that didn't make you loud. You metabolized it. And now the city understands something too late. You weren't surviving the pressure. You were training inside it. The defender understood this instinctively. That's why they spoke up when it counted. Because people like you don't forget the moment someone stood firm while others stayed silent. And people like you don't need favors. You remember alignment. That memory alone changes futures. The city senses it. That's why the tone has shifted from confrontation to curiosity, from dismissal to assessment. They're not asking whether you're right anymore. They're asking how far ahead you are. And here's the part they can't say without admitting fear. If you're this composed before power, what happens when you're fully positioned? That question keeps rooms awake. Because the answer isn't explosive, it's efficient. You don't burn cities down, you rearrange them. You don't overthrow systems. You expose the ones that were already hollow. And that's why this moment matters. Not because someone defended you, but because the world reacted. The digging, the silence, the recalibration, the subtle shift in gravity around your name. That's recognition. And recognition is irreversible. They can't unsee you now. They can't undig what they uncovered. They can't go back to pretending you were nothing. You don't need to announce what you are. The city is figuring it out for you. One uncomfortable realization at a time. And the deeper they dig, the more uncomfortable it gets. Because at a certain depth, you don't find mistakes anymore. You find intent. That's where they are now. They're realizing you didn't stumble into outcomes. You positioned yourself between outcomes. You didn't bet on sides. You studied trajectories. While everyone else was obsessed with who was winning, you were watching why they were winning. And more importantly, how long that advantage could realistically survive. That kind of thinking doesn't come from privilege. It comes from pressure. Pressure that taught you to read people faster than they could lie. Pressure that trained you to sense shifts before they became headlines. Pressure that burned away the need for validation until only clarity remained. They're discovering that you don't react emotionally because emotion was the first thing pain stripped from you. What came back wasn't numbness, it was precision. You learned how to feel without flinching, how to care without bleeding, how to stay human without being manipulable. That balance terrifies systems. Because systems rely on extremes. They know how to handle rage. They know how to handle obedience. They know how to crush rebellion and reward compliance. What they don't know how to deal with is someone who sees through both. Someone who can stand in the light without being owned by it, and walk through the dark without being consumed by it. Someone who understands morality as a tool, not a leash, and chaos as a language, not a lifestyle. That's why the digging has turned quiet. They're no longer looking for something to use against you. They're trying to understand the rules you're playing by, and that's a losing game for them, because your rules were forged where theirs don't apply. You learned early that loud people burn out fast, that revenge is inefficient, that visibility attracts parasites. So you mastered the art of moving just enough to change outcomes, without becoming a target until it was too late. You learned how to let others take credit when it cost you nothing, how to let enemies underestimate you while you collected data, how to let allies reveal themselves without forcing loyalty. That's not passive, that's surgical. Someone defended you out loud because they recognized that surgery was already underway. They saw that the damage wasn't coming. It had already been done, quietly, cleanly, without spectacle. They understood that opposing you wouldn't end in a fight. It would end in irrelevance. So now the city is doing what cities do best when they're afraid. They're studying patterns instead of people. They're mapping connections. They're watching who changes their tone around you, who distances themselves, who suddenly wants proximity. You notice it too. The sudden respect that feels forced, the invitations that arrive late, the apologies disguised as compliments. You don't respond because you know the difference between recognition and fear. And right now, they're not recognizing you. They're bracing for you. They sense that you're not driven by ego, that you don't need to dominate narratives, that you don't require approval to move forward. And that scares them more than arrogance ever could. Arrogance is predictable. You are not. You understand timing in a way that makes people uneasy. You know when to wait so long it looks like surrender, and when to move so decisively it looks like fate. You don't rush justice. You let consequences mature. And now they're wondering how many times they mistook your patience for weakness. That realization hurts, because it reframes everything. The times they thought they won, you were observing. The times they thought you retreated, you were recalibrating. The times they thought you were alone, you were becoming self-sufficient. And self-sufficiency is the one thing no system knows how to negotiate with. You don't need their resources. You don't crave their status. You don't fear their rejection. You've already lived without everything they use to control people. That's why someone defending you out loud changed the temperature. It confirmed what many suspected but didn't want to say, that you're not a phase. You're not a fluke. You're not something that fades if ignored. You're structural, and structures don't disappear when mocked. They disappear only when replaced. The city is starting to understand that you don't need to tear anything down. You just stand there long enough for weaknesses to reveal themselves. You let arrogance overextend. You let corruption speak. You let hypocrisy contradict itself. And when the collapse happens, they'll swear it was sudden. You'll know it wasn't, because you've always moved like this, quietly, deliberately, without witnesses until witnesses were unavoidable. So let them keep digging. Let them exhaust themselves, trying to explain you using frameworks you outgrew years ago. Let them argue about whether you're dangerous or necessary, blessing or threat, anomaly or inevitability. You don't need their conclusion. The fact that they're debating it at all means you've already crossed the line they can't uncross. Someone defended you out loud, and the city started digging because deep down, they know. Whatever you are, you didn't arrive by accident, and you're not leaving quietly.